let's tackle a new problem. At Fairview College, the data has been collected for several years that we see below, and we have, and let's just glance through it. We don't have to read everything yet. Let's just glance and see what we have. We have seniors that graduate at the end of each year. We have seniors that return as seniors. We have seniors that drop out, and we have dropouts that return as seniors. So let's just, before we ever read the numbers and deal with all that stuff, let's just think kind of logically about the different states that we have, the different things that could happen. We have seniors that graduate, we have seniors that return as seniors, and we have seniors that drop out and dropouts that return as seniors. So you could be a senior and then become a graduate. You could be a senior and remain a senior. You could be a senior and drop out. You could be a dropout and come back as a senior. And of all those things that I said just now as we read it, we really only have 3 things that can happen. And you could be a senior, because I know this says vertex edge graph. So we have seniors. We have graduates. And we have a third one. We have those that have dropped out. Dropouts. Okay, I'm going to turn the lights off in the room because this shadow right here is bugging me. All right, now it's dark. Well, somewhat. And the light's coming in from over here, so whenever I write, there's going to be a long shadow on this side. Oh well, now you can't unsee it. Here goes. Let's actually read the numbers and make the vertex edge graph. And when I say 60, I don't want 60%. I want like 0.60, or 25% is going to be 0.25, you know, that sort of thing. So let's keep that in mind too. Here goes. 60% of seniors graduate. So a senior that turns into a graduate. So we're going to draw a little arrow here. And that's 0.60. You can leave that 0 off if you like. Okay. 25% of seniors return as seniors. So they need another year to finish their senior year. So a senior that comes back as a senior. So that's 0.25. 15% of seniors drop out. So a senior that becomes a dropout. That would be 0.15. There we go. So we have those 3 things coming from being a senior. Now, we have to draw every possibility. So seniors become seniors, seniors become dropouts, seniors become graduates. And we have to do this for all of them. I'm going to start mixing up the colors a little bit just so things don't run together. We can have dropouts that become seniors. We can have dropouts that remain dropouts, and we can have dropouts that become graduates. Actually, we can't. That one's going to be a 0. So let's read through this and see what we can find. So dropouts that become seniors. So a dropout that returns as a senior, that's 10%. Dropouts that remain dropouts, we don't know. But here's what we do know. Now, there are a lot of numbers that are missing here. A lot of numbers that are missing, but they're going to be common sense. Do dropouts directly become graduates? No. And if they're going to graduate, they have to become a senior again and then graduate. Okay, so dropouts don't become graduates, so 0. So every now and then you're going to have to just come up with one on your own and say, well, you know what? Well, logically we have a dropout that it can't become a graduate directly. No, we don't know the percent of dropouts that remain as dropouts, but actually, I lied, we do. And here's how we know that. Coming from, let's start back at seniors. 25%, 15%, and 60%, and you know, you can do this in your head, but I'm showing you on a calculator because I want you to sort of visualize it. So here it goes. My battery is low. Oh well. 25, 15, and 60, and 100%. So 100% is coming out of there. So all these had better be 100 as well. So whatever this is, it better add up to be 100 along with 10 and 0. So 100 minus 10 minus 0. This is going to be 90. So 90% of dropouts remain dropouts. And again, I didn't have this number up here, but I did have it intuitively. Okay? And then we're going to have graduates. So let's get some graduates up in here. Graduates that become seniors. Graduates that become dropouts, and graduates that remain graduates. And all of these are going to be really intuitive and straightforward. And here it goes. Do graduates drop out? Well, what would they drop out from? They've already graduated. That's not going to happen. So again, I'm saying it for like the 10th time. There may not be numbers up here, and you have to think logically through it. Do graduates become seniors? No. When you've graduated, you're not going back. I mean, you can go back, but then you got to start another program, and we're not going to do that. That's just crazy. So that's not part of this problem. Do graduates remain graduates? Yeah, like I've never known anyone that got their diploma revoked. So once you graduated, you graduated. And that's going to happen 100% of the time. So a lot of what we needed was up here, and a lot of what we needed wasn't up here, and we had to come up with it. So let me say all this one more time. Everything that comes out of each individual, it's called a vertex, but out of each individual state of what you could be. You could be a senior. Everything is going to add up to 100%. 60, 15, and 25 is 100%. 10, 90, and 0 is 100%. 0, 0, and 100 is 100%. All right, let's write the adjacency matrix, and I'll use blue because I feel like it. And we're going to call it A. They didn't tell us to, but eventually we'll need that. So A is, all right, we have three things. We could be a senior, we could be a graduate, or we could be a dropout. Don't be that one. And then we have senior, graduate, or dropout. And I'm running out of space here, but we're going to just put the appropriate numbers in the appropriate place. A senior that remains a senior. Okay, you start as a senior, you end as a senior. That's 25%, so 0.25 right there. A senior that becomes a graduate. Senior that becomes a graduate is 60%. A senior that becomes a dropout is 15%. A graduate that becomes a senior, 0. A graduate that becomes a graduate, 100% of the time. A graduate that becomes a dropout, graduate to dropout, that is 0. We're just looking at our what we call a vertex edge graph. And the full content of vertex edge graphs will happen later. Dropout that becomes a senior, dropout to senior, that actually happens. They re-enroll 10%, so 0.10 if you want to. Dropouts that graduate, dropouts don't graduate. Not unless they take a different route first. You don't go from being a dropout to walking across the stage directly, right? Dropouts that become dropouts. Dropouts, they remain dropouts. There we go, 0.90. And we're going to find A squared. Now, obviously, you know what website to use, desmos.com/matrix. I am not. I'm going to use my calculator instead. So if you will pardon me as I type this in and then square it. And you don't have to see what I'm doing, but I'm doing the same stuff that you can do on desmos.com/matrix. There we go. I have A in there, and we're going to choose A, and we're going to square it. And when I do, now think about what's happening. All right, let's pause for a second. Blah, 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 blah at the end of each year, each 1 year. So this is what happens at the end of each 1 year. So if I want to know what happens at the end of 2 years, you know what we're doing here, right? So seniors, graduates, dropouts, seniors, graduates, dropouts, and I've squared it. Desmos.com/matrix if you like. I think I'm going to write all of those decimals because they're not ridiculously long. I think it's going to be reasonable to write them all. So we'll do that, and when they ask for percentages, we'll use the decimals as well, and we'll move the decimal 2 places to the right, but we'll still use the full amount. So here we go. 0.0775, 0.75, 0.1725, 0.10, not a coincidence, that happens, and 0.115, 0.06, and 0.825. Let's put that decimal back. There we go. All right, now we have to really read this and interpret it correctly. So what percent of students that began as seniors, okay, they're telling us where to start, what row to start in, graduate in 2 years. Notice all these questions have the number 2 in them, and that's convenient because that's what we just found. If any one of these would have said 3 or 4 or whatever, we'd have had to find a different matrix here. All right. What percent of students that began as seniors graduate in 2 years? Seniors that become graduates, That's 0.75, and they asked for the percent, so we're going to call it what it is. That's 75%. All right, they began as seniors. They're still seniors. They began as a senior. They're still seniors. We'll move our decimal 2 places to the right. 7.75%. They took 4 years of college and stretched it into 6. Went 2 extra years. What percent of students that began as dropouts have graduated? Now, I told you can't go straight from being a dropout to graduating, but there are some students that dropped out, became seniors, then graduated. So there's going to be a small percentage dropouts that become graduates. There we go. Boink, boink, move the decimal 2 places. 6%. It's a small percentage. What percent of students that began as dropouts are seniors? So they were a dropout. 2 years later, they're a senior. 0.115, so 11.5%. And what percent of students that began as seniors are dropouts in 2 years? Seniors that become dropouts, so 17.25. 17.25%.